Welcome back to the Alliance Goal Digger podcast. Today's conversation is one I've been looking forward to for a long time. I may have asked this gentleman 15 to 20 times to come on my podcast, and I'm grateful he did not get sick of me asking. Today's guest is Jarryd Wallace, a 4-time Paralympian and a 2-time Paralympic medalist. Jarryd has represented Team USA across 4 Paralympic Games, earning bronze medals at Paris 2024 in the men's long jump T64 and at Tokyo 2020 in the men's 200-meter T64. And his Paralympic career also includes competition at Rio in 2016 and London 2012 in sprint, relay, and long jump events. Beyond the game, Jarryd is a 5-time world champion medalist with 3 gold medals, 2 bronze medals spanning sprint, relay, long jump disciplines, most recently earning a bronze in the men's long jump in 2025 World Championship. And I know you all are impressed with his long list of accomplishments, but what Jarryd is most famous for is his love for his family. He is famous in his home, as husband to Leah, father to 2 sons, and most recently welcomed a new baby girl. While not training, Jarryd is highly sought after public speaker and serves as the CEO of Rival Foundation, which I'm so excited we could talk about shortly. Jarryd and I became friends and colleagues during an initiative across our state of Georgia, where he and I worked together to enact brand new legislation January 1st, 2026, which was passed because of our amazing legislators, General Assembly, state senators, lobbyists. We all worked together to make sure patients would have access to secondary devices. So without further ado, welcome Jarryd Wallace.
Rachael, thanks for having me. You give me a little too much credit on the end there with the legislation stuff. You drove that vehicle. It was fun to jump on board and shine my medals and take some pictures and speak when necessary. But I'm grateful for all that you've done for our community and excited for the work ahead.
Yeah, it's been a privilege to work alongside you, get to know you, know your beautiful family and your story. I still love to tease you that you're really Loverly Gray's brother. I didn't really know you. Something I didn't share with you, I think as candidly, is that people sent me your podcast that you did with your sister, and they said, do you know this guy? Because when you do prosthetics and orthotics, you know every patient. And one of my friends said, I believe one day you're going to know him.
Oh, cool.
And I was like, I don't think so, because he doesn't use Jason, so I don't know how we're going to do that. But I wanted to see if you could catch everybody up who might not know you. How did you become a part of this community, and what was that process? And give us kind of the details.
Yeah, so I guess I'll kind of just take you back to my junior year of high school. I had just committed to run track and field at the University of Georgia, which was a huge honor and excitement for me. Both my parents were athletes at the university. My mom was a track athlete there. My dad was a tennis player there. My dad had also, at the time, was the current head women's tennis coach, where he stayed in that position for 38 years. So I've been a dog my whole life, and having the opportunity to follow in their footsteps and go to the university was amazing. Had just won a couple state titles, but had been dealing with kind of this overuse running injury for the last 18 months. And after committing to university and knowing that, hey, I'm going to go to the next level and training's going to be ramped up and expectations are going to be ramped up, I kind of wanted to figure out, am I injury prone? Is this something I'm going to have to deal with most of my career, or, is something else going on? So we went and got a couple other opinions from different doctors, and we ultimately found out that I had something called chronic exertional compartment syndrome, which is a mouthful and a fancy medical term. Basically, all it is I've got pressure that was built up in my calves, cutting off nerve function and blood flow to my foot. Felt a lot like shin splints or a stress fracture, but it wasn't structural, it was muscular. And so the exciting thing about that news is that there was a solution for it, right? Yeah. I'd been running 18 months. I'd still been, competing at a really high level, but hadn't been able to train to the capacity I wanted to. And very quickly found out, hey, you have this surgery. 6 weeks after the surgery, you're back rock and rolling, pain free. You won't ever have to deal with this thing again. So I'm 17 years old. I know I know what my future is going to look like. Right, I'm going to Georgia. I'm going to have a professional career after this. Is going to be amazing. Let's get this surgery done. Go defend some state titles, and let's go on and have an amazing collegiate and potentially professional career after that. So that was the plan. That was kind of where we set things up. So after my cross country season, my senior year, we went in and had that surgery done. So Went in and unfortunately ended up having complications in that surgery. Ended up losing about 60% of the muscle from my knee down, and spent the next 2.5 years ultimately having a total of 10 reconstructive surgeries trying to save my leg. And it was one of those things that, when I look back at the time that I went through, it was, you're 17, you have your dreams for your life, you have, your plan for your life set up. And really, to be fair, at 17 years old, my identity was in who I was as a runner. That was kind of what I felt like I was bringing the world at that time. And when you have that stripped away, and you have your identity completely, destroyed in front of you, with something that you couldn't control or handle, it was really a tough season. I'd say there was probably an 18-month period there where I was running from God and very just angry. Why me? If I go back to, that moment specifically, I would say about 4 months into the recovery process, I was always an optimistic dude. Like even a month after, like knowing my leg is wide open, 60% of the muscle's gone, like not walking, I'm going to still run. Like that was my mentality. Like we're still good. Like
Right.
Everything's going to be fine. And then I remember going through rehab and just things weren't getting better. They were getting worse. And about 4 months in, I kind of was like, man, I don't know what my life's going to look like anymore. And, there was a pretty pivotal moment for me. It was a Sunday, man. It was, it's kind of crazy, but it was a Sunday afternoon. Normally on Sundays, I would go for a run. We would go to church in the morning. I'd have lunch with my family, and then I'd go for a run in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And it was kind of always this thing that I would do, clear my mind, hit reset for the next week. And, obviously it wasn't the first Sunday that I wasn't able to do this, right? It had been 4 months into this journey, but it was the first time where I realized my life was just never going to look the same. And I remember going upstairs in my room and sitting on my futon bunk bed and looking up at the poster out on the wall. It said, "Life is good." And I was like, man, no, it's not. Life sucks. And I took the poster down, ripped it up, walked out the front of the house. We lived about a mile away from the high school track, and I stood on the start line determined to run again. And what normally would take me about 48 seconds to do, walking around the track, ended up taking me about 3.5 minutes. And I remember falling on my face at the finish line and just yelling at God, why me? Why now? What did I do to deserve this? And I said, if this is kind of God you are, I don't want anything to do with you right now. And that kind of began the, 18 months of running from God, going through these surgeries, dealing with the pain, dealing with the addiction of the medication and just everything that was going on. During that time, if there was something that the world said would hide the pain, I was trying it, I was just trying to hide the reality of the present circumstances that I was in. It was a sad, hard place to be, but I also, now looking back, am so grateful for that time, because it allowed me to be angry at the journey, not angry ultimately now at, what has become my amputation. So I think that season was really helpful for me. And, coming out of that season, I got tired of running, to be fair, which is very ironic.
Yeah, as a runner.
But I got tired of running. I got tired of trying to figure everything out on my own, and really just kind of started being like, I don't know what change looks like, but something's got to change. And I found myself in a doctor's office. My parents were kind of like, we need to get another opinion. We feel like we've tried everything. We've been 10 surgeries in at this point, reconstructing your limb. And the last doctor was like, this is about as much as we can do. And so we went and got another opinion from a doctor. And he basically was like, he goes, Jarryd, he goes, man, I just want to take your leg off the table for a second. Like, what do you want your life to look like? And I was like, man, yeah. I was like, man, doc, I don't know. It's like, I wanted to be pain-free. I want to be able to work a normal job and not have to stop halfway through a shift to take a break. I want to, Lord, one day have kids and play with them in the yard, maybe coach their soccer team, ultimately I just want to live a normal life. And he looked at me, he's like, man, he's like, that's awesome. He's like, I love that, but it's just not realistic with the leg that you've got. He said, but if you consider having your leg amputated, I think all of those things could come true. And, it was the first moment where I heard amputation and realized like that was the right decision. And it was this like peace that I can't really explain, outside from the fact that it just was so directly from the Lord. In Philippians, it says, do not be anxious, but in every situation, through prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your request to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. And I believe, like, in that moment, the peace from God that is, like, literally unexplainable is what allowed me to hear that raw truth. Hey, dude, you need to have your leg cut off so that you can live a normal life. At 19 years old, to hear that and be like, yeah, cool, I'm okay with that. It's just really hard for my little brain to grasp like that I was okay with that.
Yeah.
But I also think the doctor did something really powerful there, because for so long I had been letting the reality of my present circumstances, the fact that I had a deformed limb, the fact that I was in chronic pain, dictate how I viewed my entire life. And I let all of my decisions be fueled from this place of I can't because, or I shouldn't because, or this is where I'm at, so I can't do this. And what he did is he removed that, and he got me to dream again, and he got me to set goals, and he gave me hope. So, man, I'm just grateful for Dr. William Turnipseed and his wisdom. And, it was a catalyst moment for my life. And, for me, I walked out of that appointment knowing that amputation was the right decision. And for me, amputation became an opportunity for hope, a second chance, not a loss of something, but a gain of something.
Oh, that's beautiful. While you're talking, I thought about, one, I have a 17-year-old right now, and thinking about, as a parent, what, now that you're a parent as well, thinking back about your parents, what did they do really well as your primary covering during chronic pain, making life-altering decisions, and then ultimately deciding to go forward with amputation?
Yeah, they did a lot well. And I think one of the things honestly, one of the best things that they did well is they allowed me to suffer. And it's like so weird to say that, but they allowed me to endure the pain. They allowed God, they literally surrendered me to God, right? They allowed him to take me through the flames, and I think they knew me really well. Whereas if they would have tried to protect me from some of the decisions I was making, they weren't naive, they knew what was going on, but I feel like if they would have tried to save me or protect me, it would have just pushed me further and further away. And so in their wisdom, and I know through a lot of prayer and surrender, they just did a really great job of letting me experience the pain, because the reality is we learn some of our greatest lessons from moments of failure, moments of loss, moments of hurt, right? Moments of pain. And they have both experienced that in their own respects in various ways in their lives. And, I think that they trusted my heart and their foundation from an upbringing standpoint, and trusted ultimately the Lord that he would protect me in that season, with no guarantees. Like, it could have ended differently, right? But, they were prayerful and allowed me to, go through that season, and then coming out the other side, it was almost like, okay, we endured this with you. We gave you the best chance to grow and make the right decision. And then it's like, okay, wait, okay, sure, you're making the decision to amputate your leg. Okay, we got to wrap our head around this now, right? It's like, whereas like, okay, we're good. We're glad you're good. But this is also a lot, and hard to figure out. And like, this is one of those decisions, like, you can't sew it back on if you decide to, go back on this thing, right? And so, I think that, again, they did such a brilliant job through the early years. And then I think what they did really well once I made the decision to amputate was helped do the research to equip me to be as successful as possible, helping me build the right team, helping me understand how to build the right team, learn about the industry, research a strategy. And we did. I mean, we built a team. We went in with a plan. We executed the plan. We came out the other side. We executed that plan. And, I think that's one of the reasons I hit the ground running, literally.
Yeah. No, I mean, I want you to speak to that of, you've said it multiple times in different testimonies that your goal was to be the fastest. I don't want to forfeit this opportunity to talk about the identity piece that you touched on. You said prior to the decision to have your surgery at 17 that your identity was a runner. Then after that, it was really fueled by what you can't do because of your chronic pain and the limb difference you were experiencing. How did you shift and not allow your amputation to then become your identity. What is the difference for you?
Yeah, I think there were a few things that happened. I mean, that meeting with the doctor was really pivotal. I think that moment really showed me the power of having goals, having dreams, looking at not your circumstances, your identifier. And so, that was the seed that was planted. After the amputation, I had this one moment. I was at Target with my mom pre-leg, and so I'm crutching around with a missing my lower leg and foot, and we're in Athens, Georgia, University of Georgia Targets, bumping with beautiful women, right? So that's where all the college girls are shopping, and I'm 19, I'm in school, or 20 now at this point. I was in school at Georgia. And so I remember crutching around, and I remember seeing a couple cute girls, and I basically had a decision to make. My mind, it was like initially it was like insecurity, like what are they going to think of me? And then I realized, like, okay, either I'm going to let this define me, or I'm going to crutch around and be like, hey man, I'm good to go. Like everything's going to be fine. And really, and I made that latter decision. What happened there for me was I made the decision I wasn't going to let the amputation define who I am. The loss of a limb, or, the reality, and I try to tell my boys this all the time. Levi is our oldest. He's 6. And it wasn't until he was 3 that he realized that not all dads have robot legs. It was like, it was like this huge epiphany moment. Like, went to a birthday party, other dads were there, and he was like, wait a second, like, what's wrong with them? Like they don't have a robot leg, like what is up? and we try to tell our kids all the time, like we're, everyone's born with different hair color, different eye color, like different skin tones. Like that is how God uniquely created them. That's not an identifier of who they are, right? And so, for me in that moment, that was the big decision, was I'm either going to let the fact that I'm missing a leg be my identifier, or I'm going to let it be my superpower. And what I chose to do is let it be my superpower. And the way that I carry myself in that regard, I think allows me to be approachable. I think people are more curious about the fact that I'm not trying to hide my leg, about the fact that I'm not, I walk around and, this was so crazy. I was at the track training 2 days ago, and there were some workers that were out there, and I was talking to them for like 5-10 minutes, and they didn't know I had a prosthetic, and I was wearing shorts.
Yeah.
And I said something, and they both looked down, they're like, we would have never known. And it just hit me. It was like, I obviously don't move with a limp, but like at the same time, it was like, it hit me that like, if you just move on and live your life like normal, like it doesn't do anything. It's not as big of a deal as we want to make it sometimes. Mm-hmm. And it's hard when you go through the trauma, because sometimes I feel like, and I even feel this now, it's like sometimes I want people to know what I went through.
Yeah.
Like I want people to know that it was hard and that I endured it. But the best way to create space for that conversation is not to walk around suffering, but to walk around in success, right? In this position of confidence and clarity and conviction, because the reality is 99.9% of people are walking around with something.
Absolutely.
Right?
Or they're not telling the truth.
Or they're lying to you.
Yeah.
And where I say that like amputation has become my superpower is, when I'm walking around in shorts and people see my leg, they immediately can connect. They immediately can relate, because they're like, I can see that person has been through something and they're good. So that gives me hope, because I'm in the middle of something right now and I don't feel good. And I think just to add on to this, like, it's okay to be not okay.
Yeah.
It's okay to hurt. It's okay to endure that trauma. I mean, it is not you heard my story. Like, it was 18 months of just devastation, right? That's part of the journey. It's okay to be not okay. It's not okay to stay there.
Yeah.
Right. And so I guess, maybe just a quick encouragement is like, this amputation, this loss of my leg is one thing, but like every day I have to wake up and make the choice to be who God called me to be that day, to manage the day, whatever struggles I'm facing outside of the amputation, just in life in general, and I can use the lessons that I learned that are very clear, or I can choose to not, and the day's not very productive, or
Right.
beneficial. So, it's one of those things that, I think every day we have a choice to make what we want out of it. And, I try to do my best to make the best out of each day, because every day I wake up and I put my leg on the first thing, and it's just a reminder of how good God is and how gracious He's been.
That's beautiful. I think while you're talking, I was wanting to transition, and I have His permission up front. So all my listeners know it's not going deep without asking prior to. So there's this unique thing that we all know for our patients, is that this is trauma. Typically after trauma, you experience some sort of mental health issue or decision. And I've just learned that elite athletes can experience this too. And I wanted to know, you said it's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to stay there.
Yeah.
Give some recommendations for people who are walking through their personal dark night, where they have to decide, this isn't going to define me, and I want to move in a different direction. What are things that you practically did that helped set you up to start making a life built around that mentality?
Yeah, I mean, it really did start in the application of the meeting with that doctor, and realizing that I was letting the reality of my present circumstances dictate my future.
Yep.
And I use the word dreams and I use the word goals, because those are very powerful things. Like, if you have gotten to a place in your life where you can't see beyond your present moment, if you can't sit down and say, here's where I want to be in a month, or here's what I'd like to see myself in 6 months, or here's a task that I'd like to do in 3 weeks that I'm not doing today, then you're not allowing yourself, you're allowing the reality of your present circumstances to dictate everything, right? And so it really is an easy application, but it's hard to do, right? Pull out a piece of paper, write my goals, write a timeline, and put something down that you aren't doing now that you want to be doing in the future. And this is not a pass-fail, success or not success deal. This is the reality and the power of a goal or a dream, is it gets you moving somewhere besides where you are.
Yeah.
And so, when I set goals, I always use this idea of, I want my big goals to be about 60% attainable. So that means it's out there, right? It's way, way out there.
Yeah.
But I also know there's a chance, if all the stars align and everything happens perfectly, that I could get there. But what happens when I start chasing that goal, in a year, I look back and I'm not even close to where I was when I wrote that down on the piece of paper. Yeah. Maybe I'm not as close as I wanted to be to the goal at the time, but I'm somewhere new. I've gotten some momentum. I've gotten some little wins. And so, it's a simple application, but it's a hard thing to get us, to get yourself to do, especially when you're in a moment of trauma where you're not seeing hope, you're not seeing opportunity. But the ability to dream, the ability to set goals, is one of the most powerful drivers to get people moving from where they are and get them moving. And it doesn't have to be to where they want to be. It's just in moving in general. Moving is success, and moving is the goal. So I would say that would be the first thing. And then just to speak on the athlete side for a second, it's really interesting because, and I've had to kind of rinse and repeat this a little, through my career. But I spend, every 4 years, I spend, I write down a goal, and I leave the previous games of where I want to be in the next 4 years, the next games, and then I spend 4 years training relentlessly for most of my career for one race that lasted 10.5 seconds. So I spend 4 years, and in 10.5 seconds, my worth based on the world standards is basically just, here you go. This is success, fail. Like, you either won a medal, you didn't, you either performed well, you didn't, and your entire value is judged and based on that. And so I had this really powerful experience early in my career. It was 2013, and I broke the world record in the prelims of the 200. It was the first time I ever broke a world record, and I walk out of that race kind of shocked, because the objective of a prelim is just to qualify for the finals. And so I just executed what our strategy was. I literally shut down and was like jogging across the finish line, still broke the world record. And I go into the first interview, and the reporter goes, "Jarryd, world record run, brilliant performance. Are you going to run faster tomorrow?" And I was like, I mean, yeah, I hope so, I guess. Like, tomorrow's about winning the race, but like whatever it takes, but it's kind of a weird question, right? And so I go to the next interview, same question. Are you going to run faster tomorrow? Literally 4 interviews in a row, I got asked, are you going to run faster tomorrow? And so I go back to the hotel, and I'm like thinking about this question. I'm like, you know what? Like, I got a race tomorrow. Like, let's not worry about it. Throw it in the journal. We'll sift through it later. Finals the next day, break the world record again, won the gold medal. Same exact person, same exact interview, number 1. Jarryd, brilliant run, gold medal, world record performance. How fast do you think you can run the 200? And again, that was the kind of the question that funneled through, most of the interviews. And so I got on the plane, I got home, I left that event winning 2 gold medals and breaking a world record 3 times. We broke a world record in another event as well. And what I realized is that the world will never be satisfied.
No.
And that if I put all of my energy, value, and worth in what the world perceives of me, or I allow them to define success for me, I am literally setting myself up for failure. And what most people don't see, right? So athletes spend 4 years just relentless training. I mean, it is just, it's grueling what elite athletes go to get to the level that we're at as competitors. And then we're judged and defined by the outcome of like these small little races that, when you think about it, like that race doesn't define me as a human. It doesn't define the work that I put in. It doesn't define me the lessons that I learned over the 4 years to get there. It doesn't define the impact I've maybe made in my community, or how I've grown as a person, the things that I've learned. But yet we get basically put into this little box of, you are defined by this. And that's the correlation between trauma, right? Because when you have a limb difference, or when you lose a limb, you get very quickly put into a box that is defined by this. And the world says, well, you are missing a leg, or you are missing an arm, or you do have a disability. And so this is who you are. And it's so unfortunate that's how we're as humans received, or even sometimes how we receive or judge others, right?
Exactly.
When it's so much more than that. So I think one of the things that being brought into this community, and obviously that experience in the games, has brought me to this place to understand is like, first of all, like, as a believer, like my identity has to be rooted in Jesus, period. Like it's full stop there. But I would also say that like how the understanding for me, the understanding that I'm going to choose not to give the world power over me there. And in that is going to allow me, to be free as I'm walking around the world, not worried.
About 10.5 seconds.
Right. And then what that does is it creates opportunity to love and meet others well where they're at, and give hope and clarity and perspective into that. So I know it was a really long-winded kind of correlation or connection behind that, but there is so much truth behind the idea of mental health. I think at the end of the day, it really comes from a misconstrued perspective of like how much power we give the world over us and our identity, but it's real.
No, I think that's so powerful. I'm going to misquote it, but it's an Air Force saying that is in a leadership book that I read. And it talks about you can survive 3 weeks without food, 3 days without water, 3 minutes without air, but 30 seconds without hope. And I think that is a powerful reminder, is that hope for the future is something that we mutually share, as our faith is what guides us in that.
Yeah.
And we can have hope for tomorrow. And it is part of our unique here at Alliance, is that we set goals with our patients to help them recognize their inherent value and worth.
Yeah.
Because it was always there. It's not determined based off of their abilities or their limb loss, their limb difference, because we believe everyone is made in the image of God.
Yeah.
That is what we try to offer every person who walks through our doors, that they are reminded of that through setting and achieving goals.
That's good.
So I appreciate you talking about goal setting, because that is our unique. I want to shift, and I want to talk about a book that David Clark, our mutual friend, talked about on our podcast. And I naively just bought it for my husband for Christmas, and I had no idea that your story was in it, which is the comeback and this phrase, people can relate to a stumble more than a medal. I know we've talked around this. I know you've said a lot of different things. Can you talk about that and how you show up in the real world? Because I think people think, when you're an elite athlete, everything just goes well. You just, I would just assume, the doors just magically open for you because you have a gold medal or a bronze medal, and, everything's just easy.
Yeah. So that quote came from an experience in my first games. So just like quick timeline, I had my amputation in 2010, June of 2010, qualified for my first U.S. national championships 1 year later, almost to the day. Ran in the 100, qualified for the Pan American team that headed down to Mexico. 16 months after amputation, ran down there, ran the fastest time in the world, won a gold medal, and kind of started on my journey to qualifying for the Paralympic Games in 2012. So, 2 years after amputation, made the team going to London, and was one of the members of the 4x1 relay team. And there was our whole team was new. There was one athlete who had been a veteran, but everyone else was new. So no one really knew what to expect from the U.S. The South African team had been the defending champions. That's where everybody kind of thought who's going to get the medal. But we knew that we were kind of a dark horse in the competition, and we had an opportunity to contend for the gold. And I was running the third leg, and I remember the guy coming down the back stretch, and I was in my 3-point stance, and I took off my first step, and I realized I hadn't lined up properly for the turn on this track, and so I kind of needed to shift my hips a little bit. I ended up tripping on my blade, stumbled. We went from like second to fifth place really quickly. Didn't fall, was able to save it, continue to run handoff. We ended up getting a bronze medal shortly after he had gotten disqualified from, one of the athletes stepped on the line, and it was just devastating. So I'm on my way back home after the event. I wasn't upset or like mad at the performance. I was, just the fact that I was there was amazing, right. And we had to kind of to keep that in perspective. But I did remember writing in my journal on the airplane back. I was like, God, maybe I'm missing something, but like, I thought the goal was to like come over here and like crush it, get on the podium, do a medal, like come back home and share your glory, right? How good, you are and the things that we've accomplished together, right?
Yeah.
And in that moment, man, I was just like, he's like, Jarryd, he goes, I just gave you the best and most powerful story that I could have written for the games, because you think that in order for me to use you, you have to be on the podium and you have to be the champion and you have to win. He goes, but I can use you in anything because I'm that good. And he goes, when you go back home and you're sharing your story of the games, because man, people don't care. They just want to hear, man. They want to hear the experience. They're so fired up and excited about the things that you've been able to do. But how many more people do you think can relate to a stumble in the middle of a race compared to a gold medal?
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of my perspective shift of, you know what? God's really got it going on. This guy's writing a good story. Like he gets it, and yeah, it was just one of those moments where, I really spent the next, year or two, sharing a story. And it really was around this idea of, we aren't defined by our trips. We aren't defined by our losses. We aren't defined by our failures. As a matter of fact, those are the things that sharpen us, that give us perspective, that allow us to become stronger, more equipped, maybe even give you a little bit of motivation, not to strive to win, to show that you're capable, but to strive to learn, to see what's next, and to continue to be a part of, whatever the story ultimately is. And it goes back to this, just the world that we live in, where it's just a success or failure mentality. And people like the idea of success, but the greats understand the power of failure. And some of the most successful athletes endured some of the greatest failures to get to where they are.
No, agreed. One of my favorite poems of all time is If by Rudyard Kipling. And one of the lines which helps me get up, and I'll transition here to how we actually know each other, is that if you can treat triumph and disaster both the same, they're imposters. And so that whole idea that triumph and disaster don't define us as human beings gives you the courage to dare greatly, because you're not in charge of the results. You're in charge of the obedient next step, which is why we know each other, because we dared greatly to change legislation together down at the Capitol in, a year, which is pretty wild.
Crazy.
Landmark legislation. I just am so proud of our team.
Yeah.
I think about every unique person that said, yes, I want to be a part of that, and the sacrifices they made in order to make it happen. For those that don't know, you don't actually only work for 40 days, 40 nights in session. There's a lot of lead up to it and afterwards. I wondered if you could share what your side was and how you desired to be a part of the movement, and something that surprised you.
When I got brought into this community, God is, I truly believe this, and I tell everybody this, that we're all, every person's uniquely called, uniquely equipped, uniquely positioned to do great things. We can choose to walk in that, or we can choose to ignore it. We can choose to walk in our calling. We can choose to activate our equipping. He will open up the door, but he wants us to walk through it. And sometimes he doesn't open it all the way. Sometimes he just cracks it open, and he wants to know, are we going to grab it and open it up? So it's not always this easy roadmap. And this legislation last year was an example of it's not always easy, and it doesn't always happen the way that you think it's going to happen. It was smooth sailing for a long time till the final hour there, and then we had some major scares, and then God was like, man, I want to write this story differently, and this was how you guys thought it was going to work, and this was the plan that you guys had for it, but I've actually got a better plan, and it's really, it's amazing to how it came to fruition at the end, and really in some capacity, like, you can only say that God's hand was fervently on that for it to be successful. Like, in some capacity, if it would have happened the way that we kind of planned, it would have been a little bit more like, we played a pretty big role in this, like,
we did a good job,
right? Whereas, like, everything that was planned, like, literally went up into flames in the final 24 hours.
The insurance committee, it definitely went in flames.
It was crazy. It really
I didn't
was
expect
crazy.
it at all.
Yeah, no, and that was literally one of those. I remember you and I chatting, was like, I don't know if it's going to happen. We just need to pray. And literally it was 24 hours of prayer, and then we got a call, it was done, and was like, what's done? Oh, and it got done. I was like, oh my gosh, how did this happen? Like, what is going on? So, man, it's, when I got brought into the amputee community, I knew kind of, in some capacity, I knew God's giftedness for me and how he created me. And so I knew that I was going to be a part of change in some way, shape, or form. I didn't know what that was going to look like, and I'm still searching, right? I spent 15 years in this community trying to identify, what are some of the needs, what are some of the gaps, and still trying to figure out where my, specific role is to help leave, I don't want to say leave this community better, but be a part of the change this community, I think, wants to see. And so when you called, when we met originally
at full circle,
which was very unexpected. And then when we had, our kind of first conversation after that was, it was like, man, the timing couldn't have been more perfect. I was in the beginning of, like, starting to slowly publicly communicate some of the things that I've been working on for a long time. And there's just so much great alignment in being involved with what was going on. And then obviously knowing a few of the people on the So Everybody Can Move team, from the parasport world was really an organic, easy kind of transition into as well. So, it was really, for me, I think there was a couple things that I took away from. First was just, when legislation is really hard, And going through that process is really difficult, and especially when you're communicating with people who don't understand it at all. And it's not a left, right, red, blue thing. It really is just, every state manages legislation differently. Every year is different on how it's perceived. It's understanding, where to lean in, where to step back, where to align, where to not. And so there's this big juggling act that kind of happens. But I think one of the things that I realized is that, every person who is dealing with limb loss or limb difference, and this is what the legislation really taught me, it has their own unique story, but they also have their own unique perspective on how to succeed, right? Whether it's personally succeed or how the legislation should be done or how it should be communicated. And so the difficulty is, because there's so many people involved, and because there's so many different ways to communicate what success could look like, it really is trying to figure out, I think the hard part is not everyone's going to be happy with the end result, but how can we start moving in the right direction to create the best opportunity for change in the long haul. And with that means that you've got to concede on things. You've got to make hard decisions. You've got to maybe disappoint or upset some people at times. And I think for me, that was, one of the things that was interesting was going through this process was saying, okay, we're not going to be able to do everything we want to do, which means there's people who have been fighting for this that are not going to get the support that they need maybe right now, but that are still very integral in this process. And so for me, it helped me change my perspective a little bit because, our individual ideas are the best ideas in the world, right? We all walk around we're like, this is a great idea, but until you see it from other perspectives and other lenses, which again, that's, I think the biggest thing I walked away with is just understanding that every person that was involved in the legislation wanted to see success, but success looked different for every single person. And so in order to, from my perspective, in order to effectively serve the community, in order to effectively enact change in the community, there needs to be this empathy and understanding of what people truly need, not the perceived needs of the people. And so, it's seeing that, and then how do we communicate that to the legislators? How do we communicate that to people and connect to them? Because they haven't had this experience, but there's something in their lives, as we talked about earlier, right? Because my superpower is visible, people can connect their loss, their pain, their hurt to that as well. And I think we did a great job. I think the team was remarkable in that, and excited to continue to keep the fuel on the fire this year and see if we can continue to gain the support that we need for the state of Georgia.
No, I so appreciate it. For our audience, Jarryd was so kind. I made him wear shorts and his medal every time he went to the Capitol, and he shared his medal with every single person. And
a lot of pictures.
Our legislators, I think, were very agreeable to what we put forth. It wasn't that anybody really shut us down super hard, except in the insurance committee, but every other time it was very much, I want to know more. And so that incrementalism that we were able to do, easy +1, helping people to better understand what we were working towards, I think that was a really cool thing to witness. And, my big surprise was in insurance committee. I had already identified all the perceived people that I thought were on our team. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't as I thought at all. The person that really moved on our behalf was somebody that I thought, I don't think he's going to be for our legislation. Yeah. And judging a book by their cover, by what they're known for, is the biggest mistake you can make. And I learned that through this legislation. The power to compromise and to find common ground with people that you don't agree with. Yeah. I think everybody should do some act of legislation, because you will quickly learn how to work with people that you don't agree with on the daily, but you do agree on one thing. And I think our nation would be better if we all had to do some more civics. So
yeah, no doubt. Very well said.
So now I wanted to move into kind of what your new projects are. What is Rival? What is this need that you have identified after 15 years? And kind of talk about this transition.
Yeah. I think I've learned from a lot of athletes in the past and have gotten some really good advice is don't wait till you retire to figure out what your retirement plan is.
That's good advice for non-athletes too.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't wait to graduate from college and be like, I guess I'll try to figure out a job right now. So I do think a lot of athletes struggle with that, right? Their identity is in who they are as athletes, performers, and then they spend 15, 20 years being the best in the world at what they do, and what they do is non-transferable into the corporate business world. And so, yes, there are some soft skills that transfer really well, but the hard skills, they're just not there because you don't have the reps. And so, for me, it's like, I want to build something I can transition into, but I also want to build something that's going to impact this community. And I think one of the things that's been the most frustrating to me is, 15 years in this community, I look back and not a lot's changed.
No.
Not a lot has changed. Industry-wise, resource-wise, access-wise, education-wise. There's a lot of good intents. There's a lot of movement. There's great orgs here and there and great companies, but just as a big brushstroke across the organization, it's just the community, it just hadn't changed. And for me, that's devastating, right? And sad. And, so I kind of was like, all right, we got to create some change. I'm kind of a person where I don't sit back too long. And 15 years is a long time. I haven't been doing nothing for 15 years. I've been strategically learning the industry, using my platform and opportunities to gain, I would say some perspective. But yeah, I think when I step back and realize, if I had to identify like what's the major problem with the industry, it's the lack of access to resources and information for the consumer, for the amputee themselves.
Yeah.
And that's like, I don't know about that. Maybe you probably can, maybe you can, but man, if you're an amputee, every person I talk to is amputee is like, yeah, I did. There was no guide. There was no roadmap. There was no, I had to figure it out as I went, and or I got really lucky and got with a great prosthetic company, or man, I did not. And it was 3 years of just absolute, brutal experience. And
none of them are Alliance people that say that.
That's right.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah, that was the understood. But yeah, it's one of those things that, it's hard because, and even in Alliance, right? It's so hard for you guys to do everything.
We can't,
right? That's
not possible.
100%. And so, there's, for me, I step back and I said, okay, why is there not this, why is there such a lack of resources, information, and I think that there's I won't give my opinion piece on that, but I think that there's a lot of different ideas there. But what I started leaning into is what happens to a community, what happens to a people group, what happens to a society when there isn't the right information or education. And what happens is you lose the ability to effectively have agency over yourself.
Correct.
You lose the ability to advocate for yourself. You lose the ability to go back to what we were talking about earlier. You lose the ability to dream because you don't have the right information on how to effectively have a goal or dream, because you don't know what you don't know.
Correct.
And so, I think, at Rival, our vision at our organization, we want to be a collaborative ecosystem for this community, and I'll kind of go into details of what that looks like in a second. But we want to interact with the community. We want to be the most trusted and reliable source of education and information for the amputee community. That's our big goal. The way that we want to achieve that is through being a collaborative ecosystem. So we want to build a space where we can take data, we can take information, we can take and develop rehab protocols. We can kind of help influence all the metrics that I think the industry wants to know and have, but just doesn't. And we don't want to do it in a silo. We don't want to do it and own it and protect it. We want to do it in a collaborative way to where we're sharing it. We want to work with prosthetic companies. We want to work with, the big manufacturing groups. We want to work with the patients. We want to work with the therapists. We want to work with the doctors. We know that if everyone is communicating in the same space, but someone is owning the strategy, someone's owning the information, and someone's helping make sure that it gets in the right hands in the right places to enact and influence proper change, that's the again, in our mind, that's the most effective way to create change. The industry as a whole is broken. I mean, there's no way around it. It's broken. And so I think that for the most part, as it stands right now, there's a lot of organizations, a lot of industry-centric people that are continuing to build things on and into a broken system versus trying to figure out how can we fix it or rebuild it in a healthier way. And so I think the long-term vision for Rival is that we create this ecosystem built on data, built on information that is, for us, consumer focused, not industry focused. The objective for us is that the consumer wins, not the industry sustains. It will sustain, right? The industry is not going to go away, but we want to give, for me, I want to give the power back to the consumers to be equipped to make the right decisions, to take agency back, to own their journey. There's a crazy statistic, and I'm sure the data is different for different groups, but roughly 40% of above-knee amputees 18 months into their journey don't actually use their prosthetic.
Oh, no, that's accurate.
So that is devastating. Financially, that's crippling because insurance is paying big money for prosthetics not ever getting used.
That are sitting in a closet.
That's just sitting in a closet. And so it's like, how can we, why does that happen? And I go back to the information. If you don't have confidence, agency, or competency to be able to understand what success looks like for you and to be able to take ownership on that, how do you get ownership? Information, knowledge, understanding. If you don't know it, it's hard to take ownership on it, right? And so if we want to stop that, and that's just one small statistic, it's wild. The industry is wild on how many more consistent numbers like that exist. But if we want to give agency back to people, we don't want that to be their story. We want their success story to look different. It starts with equipping them. And so, again, I think there's so many great, I don't think we're going to come in and save the industry by any means, but I think that we're going to come in and maybe for the first time, create a space where the industry works in tangent, collaboratively together, and we strategically gather the right data that's going to allow us to positively influence decisions in this industry, decisions that insurance makes, decisions that support the needs for prosthetic companies, decisions that make sure that the patients actually get the right technology that they need from go, not what they're going to need in a year because they only get one leg billed in 2 years. And so we're going to just make a guess. I digress. But so I'm really excited. We have a big plans for the future. We're projected to open our pilot facility where we're going to start developing rehab protocols, standardized rehab protocols. We got a partnership with American Physical Therapy Association who's going to work really tangentially alongside of us in that process. And we got a lot of other things that we've got planned down the road. We're trying to kind of build the right team to put together a 100,000 square foot performance lab where we're going to kind of build this hub where we're going to be able to capture this data, do innovation, work together with the industry, and really make the change we want to see. So, we're looking at about 2028 to 2030 as far as opening that facility, but looking at this summer to start our pilot and rock and roll. So we're excited. It's a very new organization, but we have an amazing team, a clear vision, and I believe we have a heartbeat on what the need is here in this community. Again, our objective is not to be the household name that solves everything. Our objective is to create a space where we can work together to make change.
Yeah, to fill the need. I think that's such a beautiful mission, and I cannot wait to see what comes out of Rival. I'm hopeful our clinic gets to get all those fun protocols and we get to work together in the future because we share that same value that if patients are first, the company, the industry will always take care of itself because we're in the service industry.
That's right.
And what a patient needs and their personal mobility goals should be at the forefront of every clinical decision we're making. I'm grateful that there's other people in the state of Georgia who agree with that. Yeah. It was while you're talking, though, I kind of laughed. I was like, oh, so you're doing exactly what the legislation was. So you're basically helping people define success, knowing what an incremental change looks like and solving the need and helping people become educated. Yeah. So, I mean, gosh, that's
and
awesome.
I think the one point, and this is just insight for those of you who aren't as close to the legislation, the missing link for us that will limit our ability to succeed on a legislation side of things is not how amazing Rachael and the team are. It is the lack of data that we have to support the true reality or the true picture of what's happening in our industry. And so it really, we are at a point industry-wide where the system is built not for us to win. And I say that very, very intentionally. And the only way to help gain a little bit of leverage back in that narrative is to develop undisputed data sets.
Peer-reviewed,
yes.
all the fun stuff that we don't have access to.
That's right.
I'm sorry, I didn't want to get on a soapbox, but the thing that I think people don't understand is insurance companies can say it's not medically necessary because we don't have the research to back that it is medically necessary.
Right.
So
insert rival here.
Yeah, that's why we are so pumped that there's an organization willing to meet that need so we can show insurance companies, physicians, those making the decision, corroborating medical records, that this is great information. So looking forward to the work that you're doing there.
And it's going to save them money in the long run.
It's either pay now or pay later. We all know that. It's why our state was willing to make the change without the data. They met face-to-face with our patient population. They have common sense, which I'm so grateful that I live in a state that has common sense, that when we explained what we are doing, they said, that makes total sense. Let's figure out how. And now that we have worked in tandem with our legislators, we now know, hey, they need more data. Let's get more data. And you guys are going to fill that need perfectly. So thank you so much for stepping up and using your retirement to pour back into our community. But it's not time for retirement yet.
Not yet.
All right. The goal for our movement is 28 by 28 because the Olympic Games are coming to LA. I know we currently have Olympics going on. The Winter Olympics matter. I don't want to overshoot or not give them their highlight. I will. But I want to talk about you. How are you training? What's your plans? I don't want to be like that reporter though and ask any of the wrong questions. So
how far can you jump?
What's your plans?
No. My identity is not in the success or outcomes of the world. So you don't have to worry about pushing those buttons. I learned that lesson in 2013. Have to remind myself every now and then. 2016 was a challenge there, but so gosh, training is amazing. I'm loving to watch in the Winter Games right now. Got a lot of friends competing, which is exciting to, have some personal relationships with some of the Olympians and obviously with the Paralympics coming up here in about 20 or 30 days as well. So excited for that. But training is really interesting right now. Coach has me on a not allowed to run protocol. So he goes, you've been a professional athlete for 15 years. Very rarely in your career do we have the opportunity to rebuild a foundation. And so he goes, for the next 8 to 12 weeks, you're just doing your warm-up. He said, you're going to perfect your warm-up. You're going to perfect the small little movements that make a big difference over time. And if we want to do what you want to accomplish in 27 and 28, then we need to take the time this year to rebuild the engine. And so historically, rebuild the engine means work harder. This year, rebuild the engine means do the little things well, do the ABCs really, really, really well. Be consistent, be present where you need to be present. Don't overexert yourself. He knows that I'm doing a lot right now. And so we're building a strategy this year. We don't have an international competition that we're required to compete in. I do have to show proof of performance. But this year we're looking for new sponsorship opportunities, partnership opportunities, new tech opportunities. And so, we are happy with where we were, but we think that there's another gear to where we can go. And so we're strategically having conversations right now to figure out what's the right team for me. What's the right tech for me? What's the right partnerships with me for me to allow us to, comfortably and confidently move into 2028, where I'll be 38 years old. I'm not gonna be a spring chicken there, right? And so we just have to take a little bit of a different perspective on how to do what I know my body's capable of still doing. And so, I'm just really, it's been interesting, going to practice, and I'm not even bringing my running blade. I don't even put it on. He won't, literally, I won't be able to put it on until probably the end of March.
Oh, wow.
And so it's just, I go through my warm up, go through all the little motions. I've got a high activity leg that allows me to, I can do bounds and, high knees and, simulated running movements very comfortably. But, I'm not going to take off sprinting, on this leg, So yeah, it's been a fun first, 6 weeks. I took 14 weeks off after the world champs. We had our little girl came 12 weeks ago today. So Margot's now joined the Wallace clan, and she's amazing. We finally have a chunky baby. Our two little boys were not. She is chunky, and it's so cute. Love her to death. But yeah, so it was, I got to take some good rest, both for family and for myself. And then, we're slowly itching this thing, but I think come April, I'm going to be ready to start getting after it again. And maybe that's part of the plan too, is, building this engine, but also just kind of keeping the internal engine churning, the desire churning. When you do something for 15 years, it can get monotonous, especially, I've just been very fortunate, but I've been top 3 in the world for 15 years in any event that I've, focused on. And so to maintain that level, it just takes a lot. Sometimes it gets boring, which is why I've changed events, like I've done things to try to keep it interesting. But, this games feels uniquely special.
It is.
And I don't, obviously getting to be in a home country is really special, really, really cool. It'll be my 5th games, whatever the outcome is, whatever the purpose is for me over this next few years, building the engine, I guess, that is me to get to that point. Again, from the day I ran for the first time, it was 3 months to the day after amputation, and I remember taking off down the sidewalk and turned around, and like the prosthetists were looking at me like, what just happened? And I come back, I'm like, did I do something wrong? They're not like, no, you just look great. You're running. Like, I was like, well, you told me just to run, and to trust the thing. But I remember driving back home feeling, knowing it had been 3 years and I thought I was never going to run again, and having that feeling of, joy and excitement, having those dreams and goals of wanting to be a professional athlete as a Paralympian. And I remember having a conversation with God, and I said, hey, I'm not going to run for me anymore. I don't want my identity to go back to where it was. And I had this like little hashtag and thing I put on my blade for a long time. I said, I run for him. And in that car ride, I said, you say when I'm done. And I tell you right now, like, if I make the team to LA and the night before the competition, he says, you're done, I won't show up on the track. And so it's really fun to be there and have been there for most of my career. I think it's one of the reasons that I've had a long and successful career, is because my worth value, who I am, my identity is not rooted in that. I see it directly as a vehicle for him to create these amazing experiences and opportunities to share his glory and grace and mercy on my life and his goodness. And I'm hopeful that we get to finish that writing that story through LA, but he may be using this as a vehicle to share more about what's happening with Rival, or maybe it's just to continue to keep me in a place where he's working on me and my heart. I don't know, but each day is a day where I say, hey, is today it? No, okay, let's go to practice. And so it's just fun to be in a place. I guess I don't, bless my wife's heart here, but like I don't really worry too much. Like, he's just been so good and provided every step of the way that, like, even in times where it's like, yeah, but I don't know, like, there's some things that we need to figure out. And it's just like, it's not absent of doing the work, but it's just this piece of like, he's got it.
Yeah.
He's got it. He's shown up too many times in moments that he could have not. And I just can't. There's just so much peace that comes with where we are right now, and where we are right now. Canada, it's not easy. We're in a tough season right now of life and just figuring things out. And in the midst of that, he's so good.
Yeah, unshakable.
Yeah,
that's a beautiful way to transition to how we as a nation can support our athletes for the 2028. Teach us as a nation what it would look like for America to really support our Olympic athletes especially on our home turf.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, it's a huge opportunity to lean in. We are very fortunate, to compete for the greatest country in the world.
Love our country.
Amazing country. Yeah. But we get to wear the USA across the chest. We have the flag on our chest, and if we are fortunate enough to win a medal, we get to hold the flag and win a gold. You get to hear the national anthem, which is just an unbelievable experience. But we represent the country. I mean, we truly do, and all that it embodies. And even in the craziness of our society right now, like, the reality is we represent all it embodies, means the good, the bad, and the ugly, because the reality of our career is it's good, bad, and ugly. Like, again, we are celebrated on the podium for one fleeting moment, and then what?
Yeah.
Like, then we go back to work, and we fail, and we struggle, and we suffer, and we grind, and we disagree, and we lose opportunities, and we get opportunities, and it's not all the roses that you see in social media and Instagram, and it's not just that one moment on the podium. And that our world, we're broken. Our country is broken. Like, we live in a broken world, and we need Jesus, man, more than ever. Holy moly! I mean, I don't know how to say it any other way, but there is a beauty in the fact that the journey to the podium is very, very broken, hard, and difficult. And to be a part of a great country, at times it's broken, hard, and difficult. And that's how refinement happens, and that's how we, the people, become better.
Beautifully said. I will be supporting all of our athletes, and currently at the Winter Olympics, I wondered, do you have an event, if you weren't Jarryd Wallace, that you would go and compete in the winter? Yeah.
I mean, I actually almost got talked into competing for this games after Tokyo was postponed a year, and they weren't really sure what they were going to redo World Champs, or like kind of what our track schedule was going to be like. I was contemplating doing snowboard border cross.
Really?
I grew up wakeboarding and competing as a wakeboarder and snowboarding, and so Louis Vito and a few of the Toby Miller, a few of the pro snowboarders on the U.S. team, the Olympic team, took me out, and we were in Park City, and we rode for a few days, and we're just testing some things out. And they're half pipe tricksters, so we were hitting some rails and jumps and stuff like that. But we found a few spots to kind of test it out, and they're like, man, you know what, you haven't ridden snowboard. I hadn't snowboarded since my amputation. It was the first time snowboarding, and they're like, dude, like, you could totally do this thing. Like, let's go for it. Logistically didn't really make sense. Don't live around a lot of snow.
You don't say.
But yeah, so it's always kind of a funny joke where it's like, well, we could maybe make a run for it after I retire.
There's always snowboarding.
Probably won't do that, but yeah, snowboarding would be the definitely the one. Although my neighbor right now, he's trying to talk me into being the first Paralympian and Olympian. He wants to go make the Olympics in curling, which I feel like I could totally curl with a prosthetic, but it's curling's not as easy as they make it look on television. I can tell you that right now.
I want to say, as not an elite athlete, I kind of daydream about at what point would I die in the middle of any of those events. It's so impressive to watch, and I'm so honored to get to know a few of you guys who have dedicated your lives to excellence. And it challenges me to do the same in my regular life. And as we transition to close, I tease my kids all the time, because for me, my Olympics is raising my children. And not one time have I ever heard an Olympic athlete get told it's okay to sleep in. It's okay to not come to training. It's okay that you don't do what is asked of you. Yeah. And that's what I tell my kids, is one day I'm going to stand before God, and I'm going to have to say, how did I live my life? And it's the Olympians that taught me, you guys don't take days off. You guys go when it's raining and when it's so inconvenient, when you're sick, and you choose to be excellent despite your circumstances. So I just want to say thank you for doing that out loud for the regular people like us, that we can be inspired to do that in our everyday life.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Appreciate you.
All right. Well, we do this thing, if you're a faith person, and you know that we love our patients, but our listeners. And if you found this podcast, you are somehow connected to the limb loss and limb difference community. You could be a caregiver, you could be a prosthetist, orthotist, but I asked Jarryd, would he pray for the listener that needs to hear encouragement today? So as we close, Jarryd will pray for us, and Lane, my amazing marketing coordinator, is going to put all of his links, his bio, every place to connect with Jarryd Wallace will be there. Don't DM him too much. He's training, okay? So make sure.
So bad at Instagram.
Yeah, so don't worry. Hannah tells us otherwise, though. Hannah says you're the reason. But yeah, a lot of good stuff. So thanks, Jarryd, for being on the podcast, and thank you for praying for our audience.
Yeah, for sure. Let's pray. God, we just come before you. First of all, just thank you for Rachael and her heart for this community and creating a space to hear stories, share stories of encouragement, be encouraged by each other. Lord, community is so important. You did not create us to live alone, God, but you created us to live in community, to be encouraged, to be loved, and to be inspired by each other. So, God, I just pray specifically right now over the listeners. God, I pray for just peace that can only come from you. Lord, you know every single listener's story. You know their fears. You know their doubts. You know their insecurities, Lord. You know what makes them happy. You know what makes them laugh. God, you have created them uniquely. God, I believe confidently you have equipped them uniquely, and God, I believe you have a calling for each one of their lives, Lord. May you bring that calling to the forefront of their mind. May you give them the confidence to take hold of it. May you give them the endurance to endure the seasons that feel hard. God, knowing that you are in complete control. May they find rest and peace in you, God, and through that calling, may they just find abundant joy that comes from serving and knowing who they are, and most importantly, whose they are. So, God, thank you for this time, Lord. May you just have us leave with just amazing peace and gratitude. And Lord, we just love you so much. It's in your name I pray. Amen.
Thank you, Jarryd.
Were you inspired or challenged today? If so, connect with us. Follow the links in the description box below. We want to hear from you. Until next time, thanks for listening to the Alliance Goal Digger podcast.